Hello. What we'd like to do now is talk about each of the kind of 9 critical competencies and skills and approaches and sets of tools that you need to be successful across these 3 large areas that we discussed. Remember the 3 large areas. One was kind of making innovation real, establishing strategic direction, making it happen in terms of driving results across the value chain, and making it stick given the culture and climate of your organization and the market within which you're working. So in the first area, setting strategic direction, first thing that's really critical in this area is to have a clear and compelling strategic imperative for innovation. Almost everybody endorses the importance of innovation. They tout it in their annual reports and in their forecasts. But the leaders and winners also recognize the urgency of innovation to their organization's success and even to their personal careers. So they establish strategic imperatives and stretch targets that will close any growth and expectation gap that may exist between what investors expect, what their board expects, and what may already be baked into the pipeline and into products they have and offerings they have along the way. They know that it's urgent in order to capture both the financial and strategic premiums of innovation leadership, in order to be the brand of choice, in order to gain market share, in order to be the place where lead innovators and entrepreneurs, both companies and individuals, want to come to work or to partner. So they recognize the urgency of capturing the high ground in terms of innovation leadership. And finally, they need to be prepared for what's if and what's next. And so this strategic imperative is what they use to motivate their organizations and their people to make sure they're always prepared for what if and what's next. They're always prepared for what's around the corner. They always have things in their kit bag or in their warehouse that they're ready to launch when the time is right. So the importance of this strategic imperative can't be overestimated. It's really something that many companies have come to know and to use as a way of rallying the troops and assuring there's alignment across the organization. The key ways that these companies tend to really think and act differently in order to get there. They clearly think beyond value creation. They think about value capture, so whether it's the strategic or financial premiums associated with business innovation leadership. They think broadly about what innovation is, both business innovation, business model innovation, business process innovation, as well as product innovation, service innovation, offering innovation. They also act beyond today's threats and opportunities and beyond just meeting current projections and expectations. They look to exploiting new opportunities and achieving stretch targets for their organization. All of this comes together to really drive a compelling strategic innovation imperative, and one that's got to be clearly communicated, one that's got to bring alignment across the organization, one that has measurable stretch targets. One of the companies that comes to mind immediately, there are a number, of course, who kind of set these stretch targets and put the stake in the ground. Jack Welch was famous for it at General Electric. Companies like Google clearly do it. New companies like BYD in China clearly do it. Nonprofit organizations like One Laptop Per Child clearly do it in terms of putting a laptop in every primary school student's hands around the world. Companies like Facebook do it. Companies like First Solar do it. But a company that I'd like to talk about a little bit that I think really embodies this is Tata. Tata, as you probably know, is a large Indian company that was basically building trucks and Jeeps 20 years ago. And the sorry, it's Rene, not Rene,
Ratan.
The son of the founder, Ratan Tata, was kind of moving up in the ranks and was scheduled to kind of take over the company in 4 or 5 years. And the company had the foresight, he had the foresight to really take a few years, set up a separate organization that could continue to look at what if and what's next. What if the Indian bureaucracy and political system opened up? What if globalization really accelerated its pace? What was next in terms of this world for Tata? Where were the biggest opportunities? What did the business innovation landscape look like? What could he put forward as stretch targets and goals for the organization when he took over, and how could he prepare the organization to grab these targets and move on? And so in the period when he was doing a lot of kind of planning and developing options for the futures, looking at scenarios for what might happen, making sure that he was prepared for different eventualities, 2 major pieces kind of emerged and became the kind of the major pillars of Tata as we know it today. One was outsourcing, or just sourcing in general, and they've become masters not only of outsourcing and insourcing, but logistics and all the businesses that you can build around both IT and physical distribution as people began to try to get their hands around global procurement systems and global sourcing and outsourcing. But the other thing he did was looked at his core business and assets around transportation, equipment, trucks at that point, what the future of India was going to be. And he had this, he uses often in his talks this great kind of image of a motorcycle with a family of 5 riding on the motorcycle with a woman holding an umbrella over her head through a monsoon and saying, this is not the future of India. The future of India, we have to provide affordable transportation to families across the board, and it has to be safe. And can we as Tata do that? Clearly we're here, we know how to build trucks. And so originally he set a target that was achievable for a vehicle. The Indica, which was his first foray into kind of much lower cost, much more affordable transportation. But that was really just kind of the test of whether he could really take that next step forward and put a stake in the ground around what he called, has now become known as the Tata Nano, which was a car that could be sold for something close to $2,500, could be manufactured in India in kind of creative ways, but it could be safe. And so the recognition of both the future of India, the future of transportation in India, the future of his company, where the assets and capabilities of his company were, and kind of how he could not only nail a market in India, but then take this capability for producing safe, low-cost transportation beyond India to the rest of Asia and the rest of the world. And so that story of Ratan Tata gets repeated in company after company. And the reason that I like to use the example of Ratan Tata is he's not a Steve Jobs. He's not a charismatic leader like a John F. Kennedy who says we're going to put a man on the moon in 3 years no matter what. He's not a Steve Jobs who says we're going to put, a laptop on everybody's desks. He's not a Nicholas Negroponte who's going to put, educational software in every kid's hands. But at the same time, he had this same sense of mission and stretch targets for what Tata could achieve and what he could achieve and drive him to as the new leader of that organization. In a very soft-spoken way, in a very kind of engineering background kind of way, he was able to lead Tata in this area that we call making the case for change, setting out that strategic imperative, that strategic target in a way that rallies the entire organization in alignment with this target. So that's the reason we feel that kind of Tata's a good example, but you can think of all these other companies that we just discussed as well in terms of companies that have really used this kind of compelling strategic innovation imperative, the case for change, as a way to drive their organization's success. And in most of those cases, there was always a kind of recognition of kind of what the options were, or what the alternative scenarios or futures were for the company. So kind of the what if, what's next view, kind of looking at things that might not be the most certain. In fact, they probably looked at the things that were the least certain, but things that were the most important to their organization. And taking those things that were the least certain, but the most important, and arraying different kinds of scenarios of the future and what they would mean for their company. And then developing, secondly, a clear understanding of the business innovation landscape they faced, both competitors, markets, customers, regulations, technologies, and being able to put all that together, put all that complexity, all that uncertainty together into a map where they could really recognize where there were hot spots for tomorrow, not just for today, but where they could connect the dots and connect the time horizons so that they could see a pathway to establishing true leadership. In Tata's case, whether both in outsourcing and IT and in transportation and automotive. And then taking that together and putting forth very clear targets, both targets in terms of the business or product or offering that they were trying to get, the $2,500 car as an example, but also targets for their company in terms of the growth in earnings and profitability that they could achieve by accomplishing those innovation targets. So clearly identifying the gap or establishing the stretch target. Jack Welch likes to call it the big, hairy, audacious goal. I'm sure Ratan Tata wouldn't have used those terms. He would have talked about a reasonable, strong growth opportunity for Tata and the Indian nation. But nonetheless, establishing this clear strategic imperative is essential to getting everybody together. And it doesn't have to be done by a Steve Jobs or a Jack Welch. It can be done by a Ratan Tata. It can be done by your CEO. It can be done by you as a leader wherever you are in the organization. And that's the kind of message that I'd most like to get across in this kind of first area that we're discussing under how to make innovation real, how to really establish the strategic direction for your company and the case for change around innovation. Thank you. So the question for each of us, for me and my organization, for you and yours, is do we have the compelling case that we need to have to support the case for change, and do we have clear strategic imperatives for moving forward? So first, do we have it? And second, kind of do we have the capability to continually renew it? So in terms of do we have it, we should be asking ourselves, do we have a good working definition of business innovation that includes both the creation of value and the capture of value, and that includes both product and service innovation as well as business model and process innovation? And do we have the case for change that is both urgent and important? Everybody has an important one. Have we really nailed the compelling case for change for our organization in terms of the urgency of achieving it? Third, is it clear? Is it explicit? Is it something that aligns with the rest of our strategy and brings our strategy together? Does it have measurable targets, both bottom line and top line? And is it effectively and consistently communicated across our organization? So those are 5 questions we can ask about our organizations in terms of whether we have it in place. The question we also have to ask ourselves is, do we have the capability to continually reinforce that? Do we have the competency and tools for sourcing and developing kind of rich, integrated foundation of insights, intel, and ideas to support this? Do we have a systematic mapping of the innovation landscape we face and the fields of play that may be emerging in that landscape? And do we have a way to do some kind of visioning and scenario planning around options for the future so that we can select, as Ratan Tata did, IT outsourcing and automotive. And so I'd ask you to kind of ask yourself those questions, both of your organization and of the competencies you have and the tools you have to get there. Thank you.